Compound is out tomorrow on PSVR 2, so you're probably wondering right now, damn, I've waited so much for this game. Was the wait actually worth it? Well, I'm happy to say that I have spent some decent time with the game at this point, and I feel like I can give you a clear answer to that question. So let's get into it. Compound is a randomized roguelite free-roaming shooter that takes place in a retro setting. And right off the bat, you can see that this game is not for everyone. Certainly not. But even if you're not into roguelites or retro games, I still think you should give this game a chance on PSVR 2, and I'm gonna tell you exactly why. Let's start with the basics here. Like I said, Compound is a randomized roguelite first-person shooter. The game is very simple, there is not much going for it. You just shoot some randomized enemies until you clear up the map, and then you do it all over again, in a different map of course, with the difficulty going higher every time. And speaking of the difficulty, there is no doubt that Compound is brutal, and while it does offer 3 difficulty levels to choose from, the game is still challenging even at the lowest difficulty. The developer describes it as tough as nails retro FPS, and he couldn't be more accurate with his description. It starts off easy, and it gets harder the more you progress, and since it's a roguelite, if you die, you're f***ed. You have to start from the beginning, and that is why I still haven't beaten the game yet. It's time consuming and quite frankly frustrating if you don't like dying a lot in video games and not having the option to save your progress. Because if there is one thing I can tell you about Compound, is that you're gonna die a lot. But of course, if you don't mind a tough challenge, if you actually enjoy that, then Compound is the perfect game for you. Also, if you're not a retro fan, please don't let the aesthetics of the game turn you off. I'm not a retro fan, but the gameplay loop here is so good that I fell in love with it immediately after starting the first round, but more on the gameplay later. There is a place where you can practice with some enemies, as well as a shooting range that teaches you the game mechanics, like how to use your weapons, check your HP, and traverse the maps, etc. There is a vending machine that dispenses mutation steroids. These are perks that you can take advantage of at the beginning of each run. They give you some advantages like auto reload, which I absolutely recommend in this game by the way, but they also put you in a disadvantage, like having to deal with more enemies or slower reload times, so choose carefully but worry not. Even if you choose the wrong mutation, you can still undo it by literally taking a shower in the game, which I found it to be very funny. The game has all the standard options that you would expect from a VR game in 2024, you know, snap turning, smooth turning, all that good stuff. Weirdly enough though, there are no hand gestures in this game, which was surprising to me. Other than holding your gun, reloading or pressing a button, there is nothing else you can do with your hands. Not a big deal, but I thought you should know. There are many weapons in Compound, from pistols to assault rifles, to SMGs to even grenade launchers. You won't be disappointed with any of these guns. They all feel great thanks to the haptic feedback and adaptive triggers of the Sense controllers, and I cannot stress this enough guys. Compound has some of the best implementations of the Sense controllers, haptic feedback and adaptive triggers that we've seen so far on PSVR 2, probably up there with the Resident Evil games in the top 5. It also has awesome headset feedback, and I'm really glad that the developer took his time in taking advantage of this unique PSVR 2 sensory features, because as we all know, when it's done right, it adds so much to the experience. The visuals are sharp, the performance is basically flawless, as the game runs at a native 120 FPS, taking full advantage of the PSVR 2 maximum refresh rate. I must say though, the weakest link of the game has to be the sound design and the music in general. It's not horrible, but it's also not great. It just doesn't do a great job in matching the vibe of the game, in my opinion, so if there is one thing I could change in Compound, it would be the audio. And now, let's talk about the most important thing in a video game, the gameplay. I'm happy to report that Compound's gameplay does not disappoint. It's not the best out there, certainly not the most complex, it's very simple and basic, and yet it gets the job done. The game is super fun to play, very addictive, and it never gets old. The shooting is awesome, the fast teleportation between different areas of the map works great, but I think the gameplay could have been better if the game had more gameplay mechanics like jumping for example, or some verticality to keep things even more interesting, but all in all I'm not disappointed with the gameplay of Compound. I'm having a blast whenever I choose to play this game. I appreciate the simplicity of it, even though a part of me still wishes that there was more. But the good news is, that's what sequels are for, right? To build on the existing foundation and go beyond that in most aspects. That is of course if the developer chooses to make a sequel. And yeah, I think that's all you need to know about Compound on PSVR 2. To sum up, it's a simple yet super challenging and super fun first-person shooter. It's extremely polished on PSVR 2. If you're a retro fan or an FPS fan, you're gonna feel right at home. It looks nice, it has an impeccable performance, it feels great to play, it has a great replayability value, it's randomized so each run is going to be different. It's one of those games that I would recommend to most people. The only exception is if you really can't stand how retro games look, like at all, or if you don't like dying in video games and roguelites in general, then perhaps this one isn't for you. Otherwise, go buy this game. I promise you're gonna have a lot of fun with it. And that's gonna do it for this review. I hope that you now have a clear understanding of what Compound is all about and what's it like on PSVR 2. If you enjoyed this video, then do me a favor and hit that like button, and for more PSVR 2 news, reviews and discussions, make sure you subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Let me know in the comments if you're buying Compound on PSVR 2 or not, and I'll see you guys in the next video, but until then, take care.